A mechanic found a lost dragon egg. What hatched changed her life forever. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The air in the repair bay hung thick with the scent of machine oil and ozone. Grease-stained fingers belonging to Megan Brooks worked deftly beneath the hood of an old atmospheric skimmer, the only sounds accompanying her the occasional clink of tools against metal and the soft hum of the diagnostic scanner. In the sprawling orbital station of New Horizon, humanity's farthest outpost circling the gas giant Procyon 4, life revolved around maintenance. Everything broke eventually: ships, equipment, relationships, and it was up to people like Megan to fix what they could. The 32-year-old mechanic had built a reputation for herself, not just for her technical skills, but for taking on the jobs nobody else wanted. The dangerous ones. The impossible ones. The ones that involved venturing into the abandoned sections of the station, where strange sounds echoed through empty corridors and where station management pretended nothing existed at all. That was precisely why Captain Reeves had contacted her directly rather than going through official channels. His cargo freighter had returned from a routine supply run, with something decidedly non-routine clinging to its hull, an object that had melded partially with the ship's exterior during their brief atmospheric dive through the upper layers of Procyon 4. An object that, according to Reeves' hurried and nervous message, appeared organic in nature but was unlike anything his crew had ever seen. As she finished the skimmer repair, Megan glanced at the time. 3 hours until her meeting with Reeves at the maintenance airlock on the outer rim. Just enough time to close up shop, grab her specialized toolkit, and maybe scarf down something resembling food from the station's mediocre commissary. The thought of investigating whatever had attached itself to the freighter filled her with a mix of curiosity and trepidation. In her 8 years on New Horizon, she'd seen plenty of strange phenomena, spatial anomalies, unknown materials, even the occasional non-catalogued life form. But something in Reeves' voice had sounded different this time. Scared almost. Megan wiped her hands on an already dirty rag and closed the skimmer's hood with a satisfying thunk. Whatever awaited her at the outer rim, it had to be more interesting than fixing yet another atmospheric regulator. She had no idea how drastically her life was about to change. The maintenance airlock on Docking Ring 7 was officially designated for emergency repairs only, but unofficially, it was where business that needed to stay off the record took place. As Megan approached, the familiar weight of her toolkit hanging from her shoulder, she spotted Captain Reeves pacing nervously in front of the massive circular door. He was a short, stocky man with a perpetually sunburned face, strange for someone who spent most of his time in space, and a reputation for running one of the cleanest operations in the sector. "Brooks," Reeves acknowledged with a tight nod when he spotted her. "Appreciate you coming on such short notice." "You mentioned something about an anomaly attached to your ship," Megan replied, cutting straight to business. "Is it affecting systems functionality?" Reeves glanced around the empty corridor before leaning closer. "Not exactly. Ship's running fine. It's just," he lowered his voice further. "Look, this isn't some space barnacle or cosmic debris. Well, you need to see it for yourself." He punched in his access code, and the massive door cycled open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Beyond it lay a small antechamber where they could suit up before entering the actual airlock. As Megan donned her maintenance EVA suit, a battered but reliable model with numerous aftermarket modifications she'd installed herself, she noticed Reeves' hands trembling slightly as he secured his helmet. "Captain," she said, "exactly what am I walking into here?" Reeves paused. "Something that shouldn't exist, not in this system anyway." "We were skimming the upper atmosphere of Procyon 4 for hydrogen when sensors picked up a dense object rising from below. Before we could maneuver away, it made contact with our hull and adhered." He swallowed visibly. "Initial scans showed it was generating heat. Internal heat, Brooks. And there was something like, hell, I don't know how to describe it, like a heartbeat." Megan stared at him, trying to determine if he was exaggerating or simply confused. The stress of long-haul cargo runs had been known to make spacers imagine things. "A heartbeat," she repeated flatly. "I know how it sounds," Reeves snapped defensively. "I've been flying for 23 years. I know the difference between mechanical vibrations and whatever this is. The exterior airlock door slid open to reveal the vast blackness of space beyond the station's protective shield. Tethered to a maintenance dock was Reeves' ship, the Galatea, a mid-size cargo freighter with clear signs of repeated repairs and upgrades. Its hull was a patchwork of different metal panels, some newer than others, all bearing the scars of micrometeorite impacts and space dust erosion. Reeves pointed toward the underside of the ship. There, port side, just behind the secondary thruster array. Megan activated her helmet's magnification system and followed his direction. At first, she saw nothing unusual, just the standard configuration of a Class 3 freighter's propulsion system. Then, as her eyes adjusted, she spotted it, an irregular protrusion about the size of a small storage crate, partially fused with the hull plating. Its surface had a strange, mottled appearance that didn't match any known spacefaring material she was familiar with. "I'll need to get closer," she said, already checking her tether system. "Any unusual radiation or energy signatures I should know about?" "Nothing dangerous according to our scans. Just that heat signature and the rhythmic fluctuation. We tried cutting into it, but standard tools couldn't penetrate the surface." Megan nodded and pushed off from the airlock, expertly navigating the zero-gravity environment until she reached the underside of the Galatea. As she drew closer to the object, her suit's sensors began picking up the heat signature Reeves had mentioned. It wasn't extreme, barely 10 degrees above the ambient hull temperature, but it was steady and, more importantly, self-generating, which was impossible for an inert object exposed to the vacuum of space. Up close, the object's surface was even stranger than it had appeared from a distance. What she had initially taken for a mottled texture was actually an intricate pattern of overlapping scales. The material was like nothing she'd ever encountered before, not metal, not stone, not any synthetic compound she could identify. It had a subtle iridescence that shifted colors when viewed from different angles, predominantly deep blues and purples with flecks of gold. And then she felt it through her gloved hand, a distinct pulse, rhythmic and steady. "What in the seven hells?" she murmured to herself, pressing her scanner against the surface. The readings confused her even more. The object had a layered structure, with a denser core surrounded by what appeared to be a semi-permeable membrane. "Almost like an egg," she said aloud, the realization striking her with such force that she momentarily forgot Reeves could hear her through the comms. "Hey, what?" came his immediate response. "This isn't debris or an anomaly, Captain," Megan replied, unable to keep the wonder from her voice. "If I'm reading these scans correctly, and I admit I could be wrong, this appears to be some kind of egg." Silence filled the comm channel for several long seconds. "An egg," Reeves finally repeated. "As in, something's going to hatch from it." "Possibly," Megan said, continuing her scans. "Though I can't imagine what kind of creature lays eggs in the upper atmosphere of a gas giant. Nothing in our biological database indicates any life forms capable of surviving Procyon IV's conditions." As if responding to her words, the pulse beneath her hand suddenly quickened, and the egg, if that's what it truly was, shifted slightly against the hull, the area where it had fused with the ship glowing faintly. "It's reacting to something," she reported. "Either to my presence or perhaps to being removed from the atmosphere." A new thought struck her. "Captain, when did you collect this object?" 53 hours ago, Reeves replied. "And has it shown any changes during that time?" A pause. "It's grown. Maybe 15% larger since we first noticed it. And the pulsing has gotten stronger." The implications sent a chill down Megan's spine despite her suit's climate controls. If this was indeed an egg, and if it was developing, they might be dealing with an entirely unknown life form, something that had evolved in the most inhospitable environment imaginable. "We need to detach it from your ship," she decided. "Whatever this is, it needs proper study under controlled conditions. Station management won't authorize bringing an unknown biological entity on board," Reeves pointed out. Megan smiled behind her helmet. Who said anything about asking for authorization? Using a combination of specialized tools and careful maneuvering, Megan worked to separate the egg from the Galatea's hull. The process was delicate. Whatever biological mechanism had allowed the egg to fuse with the metal seemed reluctant to release its grip. After nearly an hour of painstaking work, during which the egg's pulsing increased noticeably in both strength and frequency. She finally managed to free it completely. The egg, now floating freely in space before her, was roughly ovoid in shape and about 1 meter in length. Its scaled surface glistened in the harsh light of her helmet lamp, the iridescent colors shifting and dancing. Most remarkable was the way it maintained its internal heat despite exposure to the vacuum of space, a biological feature that defied conventional understanding. "I've got it separated," she informed Reeves. "I'm bringing it in." "Brooks," Reeves said warningly, "I'm not sure that's a good idea." "Relax, Captain. I'm not bringing it into the station proper. I have a private workshop in Maintenance Sector 12B, completely isolated, own life support, sealed bulkheads. It's where I test experimental tech that might go boom." There was another pause before Reeves sighed audibly over the comm. "Your funeral. But I want no part of this. As far as I'm concerned, we never found anything, and you never contacted me." "Understood," Megan replied, carefully maneuvering the egg into a specialized containment bag she'd brought along just in case. The egg, surprisingly light for its size, continued its rhythmic pulsing against her hands as she secured it. "Your ship should be fine now. There's some minor scoring on the hull where it attached, but nothing that compromises structural integrity." As she made her way back to the airlock, the egg safely contained in the reinforced bag, Megan couldn't help but feel a growing excitement. In a life that had become predictable despite the exotic locale of a space station, this mysterious object represented something she hadn't felt in years: true discovery. Whatever was inside this egg, it was entirely new to human experience. She just hoped she wasn't making a terrible mistake. Maintenance Sector 12B had originally been designated for hazardous materials processing before budget cuts forced consolidation with the newer facilities in Sector 7. Now officially decommissioned but never fully stripped of equipment, it had become Megan's private domain, a place where she could work on her own projects away from the prying eyes of station management and nosy colleagues. The workshop was smaller than her official repair bay, but far better equipped, filled with tools and tech she'd salvaged, modified, or outright stolen over the years. Most importantly, it had its own environmental controls and could be completely sealed off from the rest of the station if necessary. Megan placed the containment bag on her main workbench and carefully opened it. The egg seemed even more vibrant under the bright lights of her workshop, its scaled surface rippling slightly with each pulse. She set up a series of sensors around it: thermal imaging, radiation detection, biological analysis, and connected them to her main computer system. "All right," she murmured to herself as the first readings began coming in. "Let's figure out what you are." The data was fascinating but puzzling. The egg's outer layer consisted of an unknown material with properties similar to both organic tissue and crystalline structures. The internal temperature remained steady at approximately 39 degrees Celsius, well within the range for incubating eggs of numerous Earth species. Most intriguing was the energy signature emanating from within, subtle electromagnetic pulses that didn't match any known biological process. After several hours of analysis, Megan sat back and rubbed her tired eyes. She had confirmed it was indeed some sort of egg, but beyond that, she had more questions than answers. What kind of creature could survive in the atmosphere of a gas giant? How had it evolved? Was it intelligent? And perhaps most importantly, was it dangerous? As if sensing her scrutiny, the egg's pulsing suddenly accelerated, and a hairline fracture appeared along its surface. Megan froze. "No way," she whispered, leaning closer. "Already." The fracture widened slightly, emitting a faint glow from within. Whatever incubation process had been occurring, her removal of the egg from Procyon IV's atmosphere had apparently accelerated it. Or perhaps the timing was coincidental, and this was the natural gestation period for whatever species this represented. Either way, something was about to hatch, and Megan found herself wholly unprepared. She quickly activated the workshop's containment protocols, sealing the bulkheads and initiating the independent life support system. If whatever emerged proved hostile, at least she could contain it to this section of the station. The crack along the egg's surface expanded further, branching out like lightning across the scaled exterior. The pulsing had transformed into a steady vibration, and the glow from within intensified to a brilliant blue-white that forced Megan to shield her eyes. With a sound like crystal shattering, the egg split open. Megan lowered her arm cautiously, blinking away the afterimage of the intense light. In the center of the shattered remains lay a creature unlike anything she had ever seen or imagined. It was small, no larger than a house cat, with a serpentine body covered in the same iridescent scales as the egg. Her delicate limbs ended in what appeared to be clawed appendages, and a pair of membranous wings lay folded against its back. Its head was elongated, with a tapering snout and small, ridged protrusions along its skull. But most striking were its eyes, large, multifaceted organs that gleamed with an intelligence that made Megan's breath catch in her throat. "A dragon," she whispered incredulously. "You're some kind of space dragon." The creature regarded her with those unsettling eyes, its head tilting slightly, as if considering her words. Then, in a movement so sudden it made Megan jump backward, it rose to a standing position on its hind legs and unfurled its wings to their full span, nearly a meter across despite its small body. A sound escaped it, not a roar or a screech as she might have expected, but a complex series of musical tones that resonated in the air between them. The sound modulated in pitch and rhythm, almost like language. Megan stood transfixed, her heart pounding in her chest. Every rational part of her brain was screaming danger, urging her to activate the emergency containment field she'd installed for exactly these kinds of situations. But something deeper, something instinctual, kept her hand from the control panel. The creature, the dragon, took a tentative step toward her, its movements displaying a grace that belied its newly hatched status. It produced another series of tones, these somehow conveying a questioning nature even without words. "I don't understand," Megan said softly, staying perfectly still. "But I'm not going to hurt you." The dragon paused, then closed its eyes. A strange sensation brushed against Megan's consciousness, feather-light at first, then more distinct. It wasn't quite telepathy, more like impressions, emotions, images that weren't her own flashing behind her eyes. Confusion, curiosity, a sense of displacement, and hunger. Intense, gnawing hunger. That last impression snapped Megan back to practicality. Of course a newly hatched creature would be hungry. But what did space dragons eat? She had nothing in her workshop that could reasonably be considered food for an alien life form. Still, she had to try something. Moving slowly so as not to startle the creature, she opened a storage compartment and retrieved an emergency ration bar, a dense mixture of proteins, carbohydrates, and essential nutrients designed to sustain human life in survival situations. She unwrapped it and cautiously extended it toward the dragon. The creature approached with equal caution, its nostrils flaring as it sniffed at the offering. After a moment's consideration, it delicately took the bar between clawed forelimbs and examined it from all angles before taking a small, experimental bite. The reaction was immediate. The dragon's eyes widened, and it made a sound that could only be described as disgusted before spitting out the morsel and backing away. More impressions flooded Megan's mind: revulsion, disappointment, and a strange image of swirling gases and energy currents. "Energy," Megan murmured, understanding dawning. "You don't eat solid food at all, do you? You consume energy directly." The dragon perked up at this, its wings fluttering slightly, as if in confirmation. Megan considered the equipment in her workshop. She had several power cells used for testing engine components, each containing substantial energy reserves. Would that work? And more importantly, was it safe to provide this creature with a direct power source? Before she could decide, the dragon solved the problem for her. It leapt from the workbench with surprising agility and glided across the workshop to where a portable generator hummed quietly. Landing beside it, the creature placed one clawed appendage on the machine's surface and closed its eyes. To Megan's astonishment, visible currents of electricity began flowing from the generator into the dragon's body. The creature's scales brightened, and a sound of what could only be described as contentment filled the room. The power indicator on the generator dropped rapidly, its energy being consumed at an alarming rate. "Hey, wait." Megan hurried over, concerned both for the creature and her equipment. "That's my backup power supply." The dragon opened its eyes and removed its appendage from the generator, leaving it at approximately 20% capacity. More impressions touched Megan's mind: satisfaction, gratitude, and a curious sense of apology. "Well," Megan said, placing her hands on her hips, "at least now we know what you eat. Though you're going to bankrupt me if you drain a full generator at every meal." The creature cocked its head, wings folding neatly against its back once more. It approached her without fear now, moving with increasing confidence as it apparently adapted to its new body and environment. When it reached her, it did something completely unexpected. It climbed up her leg and torso with remarkable dexterity until it perched on her shoulder, its tail wrapping loosely around her neck for balance. The weight was noticeable but not uncomfortable, and Megan stood perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe. The dragon leaned its head against hers, and a new set of impressions flowed between them: trust, curiosity, and something deeper, more complex. A sense of connection, of recognition. "This is insane," Megan whispered, even as she reached up to cautiously stroke the creature's scaled neck. "What am I supposed to do with you? I can't exactly register a space dragon as a pet with station management." The dragon made that musical sound again, and Megan could have sworn it was laughing. Over the next few days, Megan learned several important things about her new companion. First, the dragon, whom she had started calling Nova for the stellar brightness of its scales when fully charged, was growing at an extraordinary rate. Within 3 days, it had doubled in size, its wingspan now nearly 2 meters across. At this rate, it would soon be too large to hide in her private workshop. Second, Nova was indisputably intelligent. Though they couldn't communicate with words, the impression sharing became stronger and more nuanced each day. Megan began to understand that Nova wasn't simply an animal, but a sentient being with complex thoughts and emotions. It understood concepts like tools, machines, and technology, watching with obvious fascination as Megan worked on various repair projects she'd brought to the workshop as cover for her extended absences from public areas. Third, and perhaps most concerning, Nova seemed to be developing abilities beyond just consuming electrical energy. On the second day, Megan had accidentally dropped a heavy wrench on her foot, cursing loudly in pain. Before she could even reach down, Nova had leapt from a nearby shelf, landed beside her, and placed a clawed appendage on her injured foot. A warm sensation had spread through the bruised area, and to Megan's astonishment, the pain had vanished almost instantly. Scanning her foot afterward revealed the developing bruise had somehow been healed completely. Now, as Megan entered the workshop after a brief trip to her quarters for supplies, she found Nova hovering in the center of the room, wings beating steadily to maintain position. The dragon had been attempting flight for the past day, and apparently had mastered it in her absence. "Show off," Megan said with a grin as she set down her bag. Nova chittered musically and flew a circle around her head before landing on the main workbench. The dragon projected an impression of pride mixed with excitement. "Yes, very impressive," Megan agreed, unpacking the supplies she'd brought: additional power cells, some scanning equipment, and a few personal items she'd need if she was going to spend another night in the workshop. Station regulations required all personnel to return to their assigned quarters during designated rest periods, but Megan had called in sick for the second time this week, claiming a particularly nasty strain of station flu. She couldn't keep this up forever. People would start asking questions, especially when work orders began piling up. New Horizon didn't have an abundance of skilled mechanics, and her absence was undoubtedly already being noticed. As if sensing her concerns, Nova approached and gently butted her head against Megan's hand, sending impressions of reassurance. Megan smiled and scratched the spot between Nova's wing joints that the dragon particularly enjoyed. I know. We'll figure something out," she said. "But you're growing so fast. Soon you'll be too big to hide anywhere on the station." An alert from her computer terminal interrupted her thoughts. She had set up a program to monitor station communications, particularly security alerts and maintenance requests related to power fluctuations. The alert indicated a new security directive had been issued station-wide. Megan's stomach dropped as she read the message. "Attention all personnel. Report any unusual power drains or energy fluctuations immediately to station security. Unauthorized power usage is being investigated. They were looking for Nova. Not directly. Perhaps they couldn't know about the dragon yet, but they had noticed the energy consumption patterns. Even with Megan carefully regulating Nova's meals and using her own power allocations to cover some of the usage, the drain was too significant to go unnoticed indefinitely. "We've got a problem," she told Nova, who had moved to perch on her shoulder, reading the screen alongside her. The dragon's tail tightened slightly around her neck, not threateningly, but in what Megan had come to recognize as a gesture of concern. Impressions flowed from Nova, understanding of the danger, followed by something unexpected, images of space, of freedom among the stars. "You want to leave the station?" Megan asked, surprised. "But where would you go?" More images filled her mind. The swirling, colorful atmosphere of Procyon 4, currents of energy and rare elements. Home. Or at least, what should have been home. "That's where you're from," Megan said softly, pieces falling into place. "Your species lives in the upper atmosphere of the gas giant, feeding off energy patterns in the storm layers." Nova confirmed this with a sensation of agreement, followed by more complex impressions. Isolation, being the only one of her kind found so far from the atmospheric layers. Confusion about how her egg had risen to where the Galatea had found it. Megan's scientific curiosity sparked. A migratory species, perhaps? Or maybe your egg was carried upward by some kind of atmospheric event. She shook her head, refocusing on their immediate problem. "Regardless, we need a plan. Security will eventually trace the power fluctuations to this sector." Nova unfolded her wings and took flight again, circling the workshop before landing atop a partially disassembled shuttle engine Megan had been refurbishing. The dragon projected images of the engine working, flying, carrying them away. The shuttle. Megan considered the half-repaired craft. It's not spaceworthy yet. The propulsion system is functional, but life support is offline and the navigation system is fried. I'd need at least a week to get it operational, and that's assuming I had all the parts, which I don't. Nova's response was surprisingly determined. Impressions of working together, of the dragon somehow helping with the repairs, followed by images of Procyon 4 growing larger through a view screen. "You want us to go to Procyon 4 together?" "To take you home." Megan ran a hand through her hair, the implications overwhelming. "Nova, that would mean leaving everything behind. My job, my life here." The dragon flew back to her, landing gently in her lap this time, eyes gazing up into hers. The impressions that came were gentle but powerful: gratitude, friendship, trust, but also understanding if Megan chose to stay. And beneath it all, a sense of something greater waiting, of possibilities Megan couldn't yet comprehend. Megan looked around the workshop that had been her sanctuary for years, at the life she had built for herself on New Horizon. It was comfortable, predictable, safe. But had it ever really felt like home? Had she ever felt truly fulfilled fixing the same machines day after day, year after year? She thought about the mysterious dragon egg that had literally fallen into her life, about the incredible being that had hatched from it, about the bond they had already formed in just a few days. And she thought about what might be waiting in the clouds of Procyon 4, an entire species of creatures like Nova, an ecosystem unlike anything humans had ever encountered. "We'd need supplies," she said finally, decision crystallizing. "And I'd need to access the main parts storage to finish the shuttle repairs. We're talking about a major theft from the station, not to mention going AWOL from my post." She looked down at Nova, whose scales seemed to brighten with hope. "But I guess I was getting bored with station life anyway." Nova's joy radiated through their connection, along with a profound sense of partnership that made Megan smile despite the enormity of what she was contemplating. "All right then," she said, already mentally cataloging what they would need. "Let's steal a shuttle and find your family." The plan they developed over the next 2 days was risky, but feasible. Megan would continue reporting to her regular job, but request assignments in the outer maintenance sectors where security presence was minimal. This would allow her to legitimately access the parts storage facilities and gradually acquire the components needed to complete the shuttle repairs. Meanwhile, Nova would remain hidden in the workshop, conserving energy and continuing to master her rapidly developing abilities. The most surprising development came when Megan, struggling to reach a burned-out circuit deep within the shuttle's navigation system, felt a strange tingling sensation. She turned to find Nova watching her intently, the dragon's eyes glowing with an inner light. To Megan's astonishment, the circuit board floated out of its housing and hovered in the air before her. "You're telekinetic?" she gasped, watching as Nova delicately manipulated the component with nothing but focused thought. The dragon's response was a mixture of pride and nonchalance, as if to suggest this ability was perfectly normal for her species. When Megan questioned further, Nova projected impressions of energy manipulation, the same fundamental process that allowed her to consume electricity directly, just applied differently. This discovery accelerated their work dramatically. With Nova's telekinetic assistance, Megan could complete repairs that would have taken days in mere hours. The dragon could reach spaces too small for human hands and manipulate multiple components simultaneously. By the end of the fourth day, the shuttle was nearly operational. Megan had fabricated a crude but functional life support system, restored navigation capabilities, and enhanced the propulsion system for the journey to Procyon 4. The craft wouldn't win any beauty contests. It was a patchwork of salvaged parts and improvised solutions, but it would fly. What they hadn't counted on was station security's efficiency in tracking the power anomalies. Megan was making final adjustments to the shuttle's fuel mixture when her alert system chimed urgently. Security officers were conducting a sweep of the maintenance sectors, specifically investigating unauthorized power usage. According to the communication intercept, they were currently in Sector 11 and moving methodically toward 12. "They're coming," Megan told Nova, who immediately understood the gravity of the situation. "We need to accelerate our timeline. The shuttle's not fully stocked, but the essential systems are online. We need to leave within the hour." Nova's response was immediate agreement, followed by impressions of preparation and urgency. They worked feverishly to load the minimal supplies Megan had managed to accumulate: emergency rations, water reclamation equipment, basic medical supplies. It wouldn't be enough for a long journey, but it should sustain Megan for the 3-day trip to Procyon IV's upper atmosphere. Just as they were completing the final pre-launch checks, Megan's security alert pinged again. Officers had entered Sector 12A, directly adjacent to their location. "Time's up," Megan muttered, sealing the shuttle's hatch and initiating the power-up sequence. The small craft hummed to life, its systems coming online one by one. But there was a problem. The maintenance bay doors remained closed, and opening them would require authorization from station control. Authorization Megan definitely didn't have. "We're trapped," she said, the realization hitting her hard. "I can override the local controls, but security will be alerted instantly." Nova flew to the shuttle's viewport and pressed her head against the transparent material, closing her eyes in concentration. Impressions flowed to Megan, not panic, but focused determination, followed by images of the bay doors breaking apart. "You can't be serious," Megan said, understanding the dragon's intent. "Those doors are reinforced titanium alloy. They're designed to withstand micrometeorite impacts and pressure differentials. You can't just—" She fell silent as Nova's body began to glow with accumulated energy, the dragon's scales shifting from their usual iridescent blue to a brilliant white gold. The temperature in the shuttle rose noticeably as Nova's wings extended to their full span, now nearly 3 meters across in the 5 days since hatching. A sound unlike anything Megan had heard before filled the small space, a harmonic resonance that made the very molecules of the air vibrate in sympathy. Nova's eyes opened, now blazing with the same white-gold energy that suffused her body, and she launched herself from the viewport toward the sealed bay doors. What happened next occurred so quickly that Megan's brain struggled to process it. Nova's glowing form collided with the bay doors, but instead of impact, there was a moment where the dragon seemed to merge with the metal itself. Energy cascaded outward in concentric rings, and the titanium alloy, one of the strongest materials known to human engineering, simply disintegrated. Not exploded, not melted, but separated at a molecular level into constituent particles that dispersed harmlessly into space beyond. Where the bay doors had been was now an irregular opening roughly 5 meters across, jagged at the edges, but more than large enough for their small shuttle. Through the opening, the vast blackness of space beckoned, with the massive form of Procyon 4 visible as a swirling, multicolored orb in the distance. Megan sat frozen at the controls, her mind reeling from what she had just witnessed. Nova flew back to the shuttle, her glow dimming but not entirely fading, and landed beside the pilot's seat. The dragon was visibly exhausted, her energy reserves depleted by the massive expenditure, but there was also a sense of satisfaction in the impressions she projected. That was... Megan struggled to find words. How did you? A pounding on the workshop's inner door interrupted her. Station security. Open this door immediately. There was no time for questions now. Megan engaged the shuttle's thrusters, guiding the small craft toward the improvised exit. Alarms blared throughout the maintenance sector as atmospheric pressure began dropping due to the breach. Emergency bulkheads would be sealing automatically throughout the adjacent sections, containing the damage to just this area. Hold on, she told Nova, who had collapsed into the co-pilot's seat, wings folded tight against her body. The dragon was clearly drained but projected impressions of encouragement. Go, hurry, freedom. The shuttle slipped through the opening and into open space, just as Megan caught a glimpse of security officers in pressure suits bursting into the workshop. Their weapons were drawn, but they were too late. The shuttle's engines fired at full capacity, propelling them away from New Horizon at rapidly increasing velocity. We made it, Megan breathed, unable to quite believe what had just happened. She engaged the navigation system, plotting a course for Procyon 4. 3 days to reach optimal entry position for the upper atmosphere. Nova managed to lift her head, projecting gratitude and relief, along with concern for Megan's well-being. Don't worry about me, Megan said, reaching over to gently stroke the dragon's head. I made my choice. There's nothing back there I can't leave behind. She looked out at the stars streaking past as the shuttle accelerated to maximum speed. Besides, I have a feeling what's ahead is going to be a lot more interesting than fixing atmospheric skimmers for the rest of my life. Nova's response was a weak but melodic chirrup, followed by impressions of wonder and discovery waiting among the clouds of the gas giant. Then, energy reserves truly depleted, the dragon curled into a tight ball and fell into a deep restorative sleep. Megan settled back in her seat, watching the steady approach of Procyon 4 on the navigation display. What had started as a routine repair job had transformed into the most incredible journey of her life. She had no idea what awaited them in the atmospheric layers of the gas giant, but for the first time in years, she felt truly alive. Whatever happened next, her life had already been changed forever. The journey to Procyon 4 was uneventful in terms of external challenges. No pursuit from New Horizon, no unexpected cosmic phenomena, but internally, Megan's mind was in constant turmoil. The reality of what she had done settled in during the quiet hours as the shuttle hurtled through space. She had effectively ended her human life, stolen station property, destroyed station infrastructure, and fled her post. Even if she somehow returned to human civilization, she would face charges serious enough to ensure she never worked on a reputable station again. Nova sensed her conflicted emotions and, after recovering from the energy expenditure of their escape, spent hours projecting reassuring impressions. The dragon's communication abilities seemed to be developing exponentially, the shared images and feelings becoming more complex and nuanced. By the second day of their journey, Nova could convey entire concepts rather than just simple impressions. Most fascinating were the glimpses Megan received of Nova's species and their life cycle. Through their mental connection, she learned that the dragons, Nova didn't have a name for her kind that translated to human understanding, existed primarily as energy beings. They took physical form only during specific phases of their development, with the egg stage representing a concentration of energy into matter that allowed for safe passage through the harsh conditions of deep space. So your species migrates between gas giants? Megan asked as they observed Procyon 4 growing larger in the view screen, its swirling storms a mesmerizing dance of colors. Nova confirmed this with impressions of vast journeys between similar worlds, following cosmic energy currents invisible to human perception. The dragon conveyed that her egg had been part of a larger migration when something, Perhaps a solar flare or gravitational anomaly had separated it from the group, sending it drifting into the upper atmospheric layers of Procyon 4, where it had eventually been collected by the Galatea. And you can transform back into an energy form? Megan questioned, fascinated by the implications. Is that how you disintegrated the bay doors? The answer was more complex than a simple yes. Nova projected understanding that her abilities were still developing, that the full transformation was something achieved only by mature members of her species. What she had done with the bay doors was a partial manipulation of energy and matter, a precursor to abilities that would develop as she grew. As they approached the massive gas giant, Megan configured the shuttle's sensors to maximum sensitivity, hoping to detect any signs of Nova's kind. The readings were puzzling. Unusual energy patterns in the upper atmospheric layers, concentrations of what the computer identified as non-standard plasma formations, with characteristics similar to Nova's energy signature when she was fully charged. I think we've found your people, Megan said, adjusting their entry trajectory to aim for the largest concentration of these anomalies. We'll reach the upper atmosphere in approximately 6 hours. Nova's excitement was palpable, radiating through their connection in waves of anticipation and joy. But beneath it ran a current of something else, uncertainty, perhaps even reluctance. When Megan questioned this, the dragon's response was unexpected. Images of Megan returning to the shuttle alone, leaving Nova behind with her kind, never seeing each other again. Oh, Megan said softly, understanding dawning. You're worried about saying goodbye. The dragon moved closer, resting her head against Megan's arm, projecting feelings of attachment and gratitude. In less than a week, they had formed a bond that transcended species, language, and the fundamental nature of their existence. I hadn't really thought that far ahead, Megan admitted, gently stroking Nova's scales. I've been so focused on getting you home safely that I didn't consider what happens after. She gazed out at the approaching planet, its immensity filling the view screen now. I don't know if I can survive in your environment, even with the shuttle's life support. And eventually, my supplies will run out. Nova's response was determined, impressions of protection, adaptation, possibilities. The dragon conveyed that her species could create pockets of habitable space within the atmospheric layers, regions where the pressure and composition could support human life. It was something they did for certain sensitive developmental stages of their own life cycle. You think they'd do that for me? A random human who shows up with one of their young? Megan asked skeptically. The impressions that flowed in response were complex: hierarchy, respect, debt. Nova conveyed that by saving her egg and helping her return home, Megan had earned a significant place in their social structure. The dragons recognized and honored such bonds. Before Megan could fully process these revelations, the shuttle's proximity alerts began blaring. Something was approaching from within the atmospheric layers, multiple somethings, moving at incredible speed. We've got company, Megan announced, checking the sensor readings. Energy signatures similar to yours, but much, much larger. I count at least 7 distinct entities moving toward our position. Nova leapt to the view screen, wings spread in excitement, projecting recognition and familial connection. These were her people, coming to investigate the approach of the strange craft carrying one of their own. Megan had expected first contact with Nova's species to be awe-inspiring, perhaps even intimidating. What she hadn't expected was for it to be quite so direct. The shuttle's systems flickered and went dark as a wave of energy washed over the small craft. For a heart-stopping moment, Megan feared they were under attack, that Nova's kind had perceived the shuttle as a threat. But the dragon's projections contained no fear, only excitement and reassurance. Through the view screen, Megan watched in astonishment as the approaching entities became visible to the naked eye, not as physical creatures like Nova, but as swirling vortices of luminescent energy, each easily the size of a small station module. They surrounded the shuttle, their movements graceful and coordinated, creating patterns of light and color that seemed to communicate in ways Megan couldn't begin to comprehend. Nova pressed herself against the view screen, responding with patterns of her own, ripples of energy flowing across her scales, her wings pulsing with light in complex sequences. She was speaking to them, Megan realized, in the native language of pure energy manipulation. After several minutes of this exchange, Nova turned back to Megan, projecting urgent instructions. Prepare for immersion, trust, breathe normally. What do you mean, immersion? Megan asked, suddenly nervous. Nova, what's happening? The answer came not in impressions from Nova, but in the dissolving of reality around them. The shuttle's hull, solid metal and composite materials, became translucent, then transparent, then simply ceased to exist in any meaningful way. Megan found herself floating in open space, the shuttle gone, with only a shimmering bubble of energy surrounding her and Nova. Panic seized her for an instant before she realized she could still breathe. The bubble of energy somehow maintained pressure, temperature, and atmosphere suitable for human survival, even as they began to descend into the upper layers of Procyon IV's turbulent atmosphere. This is impossible, she gasped, turning to Nova, who floated beside her, wings spread wide and scales glowing with reflected energies from the beings escorting them. How are they doing this? Nova's response was both simple and profound. The manipulation of energy and matter was the fundamental nature of her species. What seemed miraculous to human understanding was as natural to them as breathing was to Megan. They descended deeper into the atmosphere, passing through layers of swirling gases and energy currents. Colors Megan had never seen before, colors that perhaps didn't exist in normal space, surrounded them in ever-changing patterns. The pressure outside their protective bubble would have crushed the shuttle instantly, yet they moved through it unharmed. Finally, they reached what appeared to be their destination, a vast region within the atmosphere where energy concentrations reached levels that made the sensors on Megan's suit, the only technology that still seemed to function, go haywire. Here, hundreds of the energy beings gathered in a roughly spherical formation, their movements creating what Megan could only interpret as a kind of community or settlement. At the center of this gathering was something unexpected, a physical structure, though unlike any Megan had ever seen. It appeared to be constructed of the same scaled material as Nova's egg, but grown or formed into an intricate series of interconnected chambers and passages, floating freely within the atmospheric currents. Their protective bubble carried them toward this structure, passing through its outer wall as if it were no more substantial than mist. Inside, Megan found herself in a space that defied easy description, neither fully solid nor entirely energy-based, a harmony of states of matter that shouldn't have been able to coexist. As soon as they were inside, Nova projected a new sensation: home, belonging, completion. This was the dragon's nursery, where the young who had returned from their egg journeys completed their development before joining the community as full energy beings. More surprising was what Megan saw within the nursery. Other dragons in physical form like Nova, some smaller, some considerably larger, all bearing the same iridescent scales and graceful proportions. And moving among them were humans? No, Megan realized upon closer inspection, not humans. They were bipedal and generally humanoid in shape, but their features were too perfect, their movements too fluid. And their eyes, solid orbs of swirling energy, just like Nova's, marked them as something else entirely. What are they? Megan asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nova's explanation came in a cascade of images and concepts. These were members of her species who had chosen to adopt physical forms modeled after the intelligent beings they had encountered throughout their cosmic migrations. They served as caretakers for the young during their physical phase, teaching and nurturing them until they were ready for full energy transformation. And now, one of the humanoid figures was approaching them. It moved with impossible grace, its form seeming to flow rather than walk. As it drew closer, Megan saw that its appearance was shifting subtly, features rearranging until, with a shock of recognition, she found herself looking at a being that resembled her own reflection, though idealized and suffused with the same inner light that characterized Nova's kind. "Welcome, Megan Brooks," the being said, its voice resonating not through the air but directly in her mind. "We have been watching your approach with great interest. Nova has shared much about you." Megan struggled to find her voice. "You speak English?" A sound like crystalline wind chimes filled the space. Laughter, she realized. We speak no language in all languages, the being replied. What you hear is shaped by your own mind to enable understanding. Who are you? Megan asked. What are you exactly? We are the Luminari, the being answered, the name translating into something Megan could comprehend. We exist primarily as energy, traveling the cosmic currents between worlds like yours. We have been observing humanity for many of your centuries, though rarely interacting directly. Until now, Megan said, glancing at Nova, who had moved to hover beside her protectively. Yes, the being, the Luminari, confirmed. Until Nova's unexpected bond with you created a bridge between our kinds. It gestured around them. This nursery exists in a state between energy and matter, a place where our young can safely develop their abilities before joining the greater community. It can sustain your physical form indefinitely if you choose to stay. Megan blinked in surprise. Stay? You're inviting me to live here. Nova has claimed you as kin, the Luminari explained. Such bonds are sacred to us and not entered into lightly. She chose to return here not just to rejoin her people, but to bring you into our community, if that is your wish. The implications were staggering. Megan looked around at the impossible space surrounding them, at the young dragons in various stages of development, at the energy beings that flowed through the structure like living currents. What would I do here? She asked, practical concerns surfacing even amid the wonder. I'm a mechanic. I fix things. You don't seem to need much fixing. The Luminari's form shifted slightly, energy patterns changing to express what Megan interpreted as amusement. You are much more than your profession, Megan Brooks. You are an explorer at heart, one who chose to risk everything to help a being you barely understood. Such qualities are rare and valued among us. It continued, we have much to learn from each other. Your understanding of physical technologies and materials complements our mastery of energy. Together, we might discover possibilities neither of our species has imagined. Nova pressed against Megan's side, projecting images of discovery, adventure, growth, a future together that transcended the limitations of either of their original paths. And if I want to return to human space someday? Megan asked, though she was already beginning to doubt she would ever want to. That choice will always remain yours, the Luminari assured her. We do not hold, we only invite. The journey that brought you here can be reversed at any time. Megan looked at Nova, whose large eyes gazed back with undisguised hope. In less than a week, this extraordinary creature had completely transformed her existence, showing her wonders she had never imagined possible. The thought of returning to her old life, fixing broken machines in the same recycled air of New Horizon, suddenly seemed impossibly constraining. I think, she said slowly, reaching out to stroke Nova's neck, I'd like to stay, at least for a while. See where this path leads. Nova's joy radiated through their connection, bright enough that Megan imagined she could actually see it illuminating the space between them. The dragon launched herself into the air, performing an elaborate aerial dance that made the other young dragons chirrup in appreciation. The Luminari extended a hand, not quite solid, not quite energy, toward Megan. Then let me show you your new home, mechanic who found the lost egg. Your journey has only just begun. As Megan took the offered hand, she felt a profound sense of rightness, of pieces falling into place. Whatever challenges and wonders awaited her among the Luminari, she would face them with Nova at her side. Together, they would explore the boundaries between energy and matter, between human understanding and dragon wisdom. The mechanic who had once spent her days fixing broken machines would now help build bridges between worlds, her life forever changed by the dragon who had hatched in her workshop and chosen her as family. In the swirling atmospheres of Procyon 4, Megan Brooks found not just a new home, but a new purpose, and a bond that transcended the very definitions of life as she had known it. The year that followed was one of constant discovery and adaptation for Megan. Living within the Luminari nursery required significant adjustments, not just to the unusual environment, but to an entirely different concept of existence itself. The nursery, she learned, existed in a state the Luminari called phase harmony, where energy and matter coexisted and interchanged fluidly. This meant that physical objects, including Megan herself, could be sustained indefinitely without the normal requirements of human life. She didn't need to eat in the traditional sense, instead absorbing energy directly like the dragons did, though her human body processed it differently. Sleep became optional rather than necessary, more a psychological comfort than a physical requirement. Most remarkable was how the nursery itself responded to her needs. When she thought of having a workspace, a section of the structure reconfigured itself into something resembling her workshop on New Horizon, complete with tools that functioned through energy manipulation rather than physical mechanics. When she missed the sensation of rain, a rarity on the space station but a cherished memory from her childhood on Earth, the nursery would create localized precipitation, water droplets forming from the very atmosphere around her. Through it all, Nova remained her constant companion. The dragon grew at an astonishing rate, reaching the size of a small shuttle within 6 months. Her abilities developed equally rapidly, from the initial energy absorption and telekinesis to more complex manipulations of matter and space. She could now create small pocket dimensions, generate targeted electromagnetic pulses, and even temporarily phase her entire body into pure energy for short periods. But the most significant development was in their communication. What had begun as simple impressions and images evolved into a complex, shared language that transcended both human speech and luminary energy patterns. They could now exchange abstract concepts, philosophical ideas, and emotional nuances that would have been impossible to convey in either of their native communication forms. "I still don't understand why the egg phase is necessary," Megan said one day as they observed a group of newly returned eggs in the nursery's incubation chamber. "If your kind exists primarily as energy, why materialize at all?" Nova, perched beside her in physical form, projected her explanation. The egg phase served multiple purposes. It protected the developing consciousness during the vulnerable early stages, allowed for genetic diversity through material exchange during formation, and most importantly, enabled the great migrations between worlds. Pure energy forms could not traverse the void of deep space as easily as the condensed, protected egg state. "So it's like a spacecraft," Megan mused, her mechanics mind drawing the parallel. "A vehicle designed for a specific environment that the passenger can't navigate otherwise." Nova confirmed this with approval at the apt comparison, adding that the physical dragon form they adopted after hatching was similarly adapted for specific purposes, learning physical interaction, developing energy control through material limitations, and, historically, for engaging with physical beings they encountered. Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of the luminari who had first welcomed Megan to the nursery. Over time, she had come to know this being as Sereth, though she understood that names were largely a concession to her human need for individual identification. The luminari existed in a state of partial consciousness sharing that made identity more fluid than humans could comfortably comprehend. "Your presence continues to create ripples of change among us, Megan," Sereth said, their forms shimmering with energy patterns that Megan had learned to read as pleased amusement. "The elders wish to speak with you and Nova." This was unexpected. The elders, as Sereth called them for Megan's benefit, were the oldest and most powerful of the luminari, beings who had existed for thousands of years and rarely took interest in individual matters. Megan had been aware of their presence, vast energy patterns that moved through the atmospheric layers of Procyon 4, occasionally gathering to form what she interpreted as a kind of council, but had never directly interacted with them. "Have we done something wrong?" she asked, a flicker of anxiety running through her. Though she had been welcomed by most of the luminari, she remained acutely aware of her status as an outsider, the only human in a community of energy beings. "Quite the opposite," Sereth assured her. "Your work with Nova on adapting our energy manipulation techniques to interface with human technology has drawn their attention. They see potential in this hybridization of approaches." Over the past months, Megan had indeed been exploring the intersection of her mechanical knowledge with luminary energy manipulation. What had begun as simple curiosity, could she create tools that operated on both principles, had evolved into increasingly sophisticated experiments. Her most recent success had been a device that could translate luminary energy patterns into data comprehensible to human systems, essentially a bridge between two fundamentally different approaches to technology. When do they want to meet? Megan asked, exchanging a glance with Nova, who projected curious excitement at the invitation. Now, Sareth replied, gesturing toward the outer wall of the nursery, where an opening was forming. They have created a space where communication will be possible. Megan and Nova followed Sareth through the opening and into a region of the atmosphere unlike any Megan had previously experienced. Here, the swirling gases of Procyon 4 formed patterns of impossible complexity, energy currents weaving through them in what appeared to be a vast, three-dimensional tapestry of light and color. At the center of this display, 7 immense energy formations gathered, the Elders, Megan realized, each one larger and more complex than any luminari she had encountered before. They didn't maintain humanoid forms as the nursery caretakers did, instead existing as pure energy patterns that shifted and flowed in ways that simultaneously suggested both great age and vibrant vitality. The human mechanic and her bonded. A voice resonated directly in Megan's mind, impossibly deep and layered with harmonics that seemed to touch her very soul. Approach and be recognized. Nova guided Megan forward, both of them moving through the currents of energy that should have been lethal to human life, but instead cradled her in a protective embrace. As they reached the center of the gathering, the 7 elders moved to surround them, their vast energies forming a sphere of light, with Megan and Nova suspended at its heart. "We have observed your experiments," another voice stated, this one higher and quicker, giving Megan the impression of keen intellect and curiosity. "The merger of physical mechanics with energy manipulation is unprecedented in our experience. I'm just applying what I know about machines to what I'm learning about energy flow," Megan explained, trying to keep her voice steady despite the awe-inspiring presence of the elders. "The principles aren't actually that different, once you understand the underlying patterns. Yet no luminari has thought to explore this connection," a third voice noted, somehow conveying ancient wisdom and childlike wonder simultaneously. "It required an outsider perspective, yours, Megan Brooks." Nova projected pride in her human companion, sharing with the elders the journey they had undertaken together and the growth they had both experienced through their partnership. "Yes," acknowledged the first elder, "this bond between you is also of great interest to us. It represents a potential we had not considered, direct symbiosis between our kind and physically bound species." "Symbiosis," Megan echoed, glancing at Nova. "I suppose that's accurate. We do help each other in different ways. More than you yet realize," the second elder responded. "The energy patterns Nova has developed through her connection with you are unique among our kind, more structured, more focused. And you, human, have begun to exhibit changes that suggest reciprocal adaptation." This caught Megan by surprise. "Changes? What kind of changes?" Instead of answering directly, one of the elders extended a tendril of energy toward her. With Nova's reassuring presence beside her, Megan allowed the contact, gasping as her perception suddenly expanded. She could see, not with her eyes, but with some new sense altogether. The energy flows around her, within her, connecting everything in delicate webs of light and force. "Your prolonged exposure to our environment and to Nova's energy has initiated changes in your neural pathways," the elder explained as the enhanced perception faded, leaving Megan blinking in astonishment. "You are developing rudimentary energy sensitivity. With time and training, this could evolve into abilities similar to our own, though filtered through your human physiology." The implications were staggering. Megan had noticed she was becoming more attuned to the luminary environment, more capable of perceiving subtle changes in energy patterns, but had attributed it to simple familiarity. The idea that she might be physically evolving in response to her new environment, actually gaining abilities beyond normal human capacity, had never occurred to her. "Is it dangerous?" she asked, the practical side of her nature asserting itself. "These changes, I mean." "All transformation carries risk," the first elder acknowledged. "But Nova's presence stabilizes the process. Your bond serves as both catalyst and regulator." Nova moved closer to Megan, their energies mingling in a way that had become natural over their time together. The dragon projected reassurance, along with her own surprise and fascination at the elder's revelations. "We have a proposal," the third elder announced after a moment of silent communication among the seven. "Your work bridging physical technology and energy manipulation has applications beyond mere academic interest. It could serve as the foundation for a new approach to travel, communication, and cooperation between species. We wish you to continue this research," the second elder added, "but with greater resources and purpose. Specifically, we envision the creation of vessels that could transport physical beings safely through energy states, allowing humans and other material species to travel the cosmic currents as we do." Megan's mind raced with the technical challenges and possibilities. "You're talking about ships that could, what, transform matter into energy for faster-than-light travel? That's way beyond my expertise. I'm just a station mechanic." "You were a station mechanic," the first elder corrected gently. "Now you are something new, a bridge between worlds, with unique insight into both realms. Nova will provide the energy understanding. You contribute the material perspective. Together, you represent the perfect team to pioneer this approach." Nova's excitement bubbled through their connection. Images of traveling together through the cosmic currents, visiting distant worlds, creating pathways for others to follow. The dragon had always been fascinated by Megan's stories of human technology and space travel, seeing potential where the Luminari, with their natural abilities, had never needed to explore. "If we succeed," Megan said slowly, working through the implications, "it would revolutionize human space travel. The distances between star systems that take years to traverse with our fastest ships could be covered in, what, days? Hours? Moments?" the second elder corrected. "The cosmic currents, once properly accessed, allow near-instantaneous transit between connected points." The scale of what they were proposing left Megan momentarily speechless. This wasn't just an interesting research project. It was potentially the most significant technological advancement in human history. And they were asking her, a former repair technician from a minor orbital station, to help develop it. "Why me?" she finally asked. "Surely there are human scientists, engineers with advanced degrees and resources who would be better suited." "None who understand our nature as you do," the third elder interrupted. "None who share a bond with one of our kind. None who have already begun the physiological adaptation that allows true comprehension of energy states." There was a pause that somehow conveyed deep consideration. "And none who have demonstrated your particular quality of intuitive leaping." "My what?" Nova projected the explanation. Images of Megan working in her workshop, making connections between seemingly unrelated systems, solving problems through unorthodox approaches that bewildered but impressed the Luminari observers. "Your mind does not follow linear paths," the first elder elaborated. "It sees patterns and possibilities that more structured thinking would miss. This quality is rare and valuable for the task we propose." Megan looked at Nova, their gazes meeting in the silent communication that had become second nature. The dragon's opinion was clear: excitement, readiness, absolute confidence in their combined abilities. But beneath that ran a deeper current. Whatever Megan decided, Nova would support her choice. The year they had spent together had transformed both of them in ways neither could have anticipated. Nova had developed a structured approach to problem-solving that was unusual among the Luminari, a result of working alongside Megan's mechanical methodology. And Megan, beyond the physiological changes the elders had noted, had gained a perspective that transcended human limitations, seeing beyond the material to the energy that underlay all existence. Together, they had already created tools and techniques that merged both worlds. The challenge the elders proposed would take that work to an entirely new level, with implications that could reshape the relationship between humans and the vast cosmos they had only begun to explore. "If we succeed," Megan said carefully, "what happens then? Would the Luminari reveal themselves to humanity? Share this technology openly?" The elders' energy patterns shifted in a way that suggested thoughtful consideration. "That decision would need to be approached with great care," the first elder responded. "Humanity's history contains many examples of technological advancement outpacing wisdom. We envision a gradual introduction," the second elder added. beginning with limited contact through designated representatives, such as yourself, before proceeding to broader engagement. Nova projected her own perspective, images of humans and Luminari working together, learning from each other, each species contributing unique strengths to shared challenges. The dragon saw potential for genuine symbiosis on a civilization scale, not just the personal level she and Megan had achieved. It would change everything, Megan mused, the engineer in her already beginning to envision the technical components they would need to develop. Human society is built around the limitations of our current space travel capabilities. Instant transportation between star systems would transform economies, politics, culture, everything. Change is the only constant in the universe, the third elder observed with what Megan interpreted as gentle humor. All species must adapt or stagnate. The question is whether this particular change would lead to growth or destruction. And you think I can help ensure it's the former? Megan asked skeptically. We think you and Nova together represent a model for what could be possible, the first elder clarified. Your partnership demonstrates that humans and Luminari can not only coexist, but thrive through cooperation. The technology you develop would be the means, but the relationship you embody would be the true innovation. Megan took a deep breath, though in this environment, it was more habit than necessity. The magnitude of what they were suggesting was almost overwhelming. A year ago, she had been fixing atmospheric regulators and calibrating engine components. Now she was being asked to help develop technology that could fundamentally alter the course of human history. But when she looked at Nova, at the extraordinary being who had hatched from a lost egg in her workshop and become the most important relationship in her life, the decision didn't seem impossible after all. Together, they had already accomplished things neither could have imagined alone. This would be just another step, admittedly a massive one, on the journey they had begun the moment Nova's egg had attached itself to Captain Reeves' ship. We'll do it, she said finally, feeling Nova's joy surge through their connection. I can't promise success, especially not quickly. This kind of technology development could take years, maybe decades. Time flows differently for us than for your kind, the second elder noted. We measure progress in generations, not years. Take what time you need to do this properly. The gathering of elders shifted, their energy patterns forming new configurations that somehow conveyed both formal approval and genuine excitement. Resources would be allocated, a dedicated space created within the atmospheric layers where Megan and Nova could conduct their research without interference. Other Luminari with relevant knowledge would be assigned to assist them, and arrangements would be made to acquire whatever physical materials they might need from human space. As the meeting concluded and they prepared to return to the nursery, Megan felt a strange sense of completion, as if her entire life had been unconsciously moving toward this moment. From the curious child disassembling household appliances to understand their workings, to the skilled mechanic who had built a reputation for solving the unsolvable, to now, pioneer of an entirely new technological paradigm. You know, she said to Nova as they drifted back toward the nursery, the vast energy patterns of the elders dispersing around them. When I agreed to help you get back to your people, I never imagined where it would lead. Nova's response was characteristically insightful, impressions suggesting that the greatest journeys rarely follow predictable paths, that the most significant discoveries often come from unexpected directions. The dragon reminded Megan of the moment they had first connected in her workshop, how neither of them could have anticipated the bond that would form between them. True enough, Megan agreed, watching the swirling atmospheric currents of Procyon 4 with her gradually enhancing perception. She could see now what had been invisible to her a year ago, the intricate energy flows that connected all things, the patterns within patterns that made up the complex tapestry of existence. And within that tapestry, her connection to Nova shone brightest of all, a bond formed across species and states of being, a partnership that had changed both their lives forever. Whatever challenges lay ahead in their new mission, they would face them together, mechanic and dragon, creating bridges between worlds that had once seemed impossibly distant. As they reached the nursery and rejoined the community that had become Megan's new home, she reflected that she had gained far more than she had left behind. Her life as a station mechanic had been comfortable but ultimately limited. Here, With Nova and the Luminari, every day brought new discoveries, new possibilities, new growth. The dragon egg that had mysteriously attached itself to Captain Reeves' ship hadn't just contained a remarkable alien being. It had contained Megan's future, a path she could never have found on her own. And she wouldn't trade it for anything in the universe. 5 years passed in the atmospheric layers of Procyon 4, years of intensive research, technological development, and continuing personal transformation for both Megan and Nova. The project the Elders had assigned them, creating vessels that could safely transport physical beings through energy states, proved even more complex than they had anticipated, requiring innovations in fields ranging from quantum mechanics to biological adaptation theory. Their workspace had evolved from a simple laboratory into an extensive research facility, a harmonious blend of human engineering principles and luminary energy manipulation. Megan's originally rudimentary energy sensitivity had developed into sophisticated perception and limited manipulation abilities, while Nova, now fully mature and capable of complete energy transformation, had gained an intuitive understanding of material engineering that was unprecedented among her kind. The breakthrough, when it finally came, emerged from an unexpected direction. They had been focusing on creating external technology to facilitate the matter-energy conversion, but during one of their daily connection sessions, mental exchanges that had deepened over the years into near-complete consciousness sharing, Nova projected an insight that shifted their entire approach. "It's not about converting the physical vessel," Megan said aloud, the realization crystallizing as they shared the concept. "It's about temporarily extending the natural luminary ability to shift between states to encompass the vessel and its occupants." Nova confirmed this with excited energy patterns, already demonstrating the principle by shifting a small tool from solid matter to energy state and back again without damaging its structure. Within months, they had developed a prototype, a small craft built from materials that resonated with luminary energy patterns, equipped with systems designed to amplify and direct the energy manipulation abilities of a luminary pilot. In theory, such a vessel could transport human passengers safely through the cosmic currents, allowing near-instantaneous travel between distant points in space. The day of the first test had arrived. The prototype vessel, which Megan had named Nexus, floated in a stable position within their research facility, its elegant form representing countless iterations of design refinement. It was small, designed to carry only 2 passengers initially, with a transparent canopy that revealed the pilot and navigation stations within. A small group had gathered to witness the test. Sereth and several other luminari who had worked closely with them over the years, representatives from the Elders who had commissioned the project, and most surprisingly, 2 human observers, scientists from the Interstellar Exploration Initiative who had been carefully approached and briefed on the luminari's existence. These human representatives, Dr. Eliza Cooper and Dr. Marcus Dean, stood slightly apart, their expressions a mixture of awe and scientific curiosity as they observed the luminari in their natural state. "Are you ready?" Megan asked Nova, who had taken position at the pilot's interface, a crystalline structure designed to amplify her energy manipulation abilities. Nova's response flowed through their bond: confidence, excitement, and deep affection. After 5 years of working together, their connection had become something transcendent, a true symbiosis of human and luminary consciousness. The test was a resounding success. The Nexus, with Megan and Nova aboard, transformed from solid matter to pure energy, traversed the cosmic currents to Earth's orbit, and rematerialized perfectly, a journey of hundreds of light years completed in seconds. Over the next decade, this technology revolutionized human space exploration. A new generation of Nexus vessels, piloted by luminari who chose to partner with human crews, established transportation networks between star systems. The luminari revealed themselves gradually to humanity, not as conquerors or even teachers, but as partners in cosmic exploration. For Megan and Nova, their work continued evolving. They established the first luminari human academy in Earth orbit, training others in the delicate art of cross-species cooperation. Their story became legendary: the mechanic who found a lost dragon egg and, in doing so, opened the door to a new era of interstellar cooperation. On the 20th anniversary of their partnership, they stood together on a viewing platform orbiting Procyon 4, watching ships arriving from a dozen different star systems for the annual Convergence celebration. "Did you ever imagine this is where we'd end up?" asked Dr. Cooper, now Director of Luminary Relations, who had joined them for the occasion. Megan smiled, reaching out to stroke Nova's scales. The dragons still maintained physical form when they worked with humans, though both could now shift between states at will, another unexpected development of their unique bond. "Honestly, no," Megan answered. "I was just trying to fix a strange object attached to a ship's hull. But that's the beauty of it, isn't it? The best journeys are the ones you never planned." Nova projected agreement, adding impressions of their countless adventures across the stars, the civilizations they'd encountered, the knowledge they'd gained. But beneath it all ran the constant thread that had defined their relationship from the beginning, a bond of trust and friendship that had literally changed two worlds. That night, as cosmic energies danced in celebration around them, Megan reflected on how completely her life had been transformed by that single moment of discovery in a repair bay on New Horizon. A mechanic who found a lost dragon egg, and in that finding, discovered not just a new species, but a new destiny for herself and for humanity. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.